All right, hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of Just a Girl from Cleveland. This is episode 103, and we only have a few weeks left of NFL football, which is really a sad realization that you have to come to at the end of every season. Of course, the Brown season is already over, but you still have other exciting football to be watching, and then suddenly you're counting down the games, and we have 3 football games left on the schedule this year, which is crazy and makes me sad every time. So trying to soak up all of that. And we're definitely going to get into a lot of that today. So kind of recapping some thoughts on the divisional round, what I see going forward. And then I want to talk about the NFL awards and what I think is going to happen versus what I thought was going to happen in the preseason. I went back and looked at what some of my selections were, so we'll get into that, and as well as what I had predicted for the winners of each division, and who was going to the Super Bowl, and then what actually ended up happening. So it's always fun to see, because I feel like everyone is so confident going into the season, like, okay, these are the teams that are going to be competing, who's going to be, good this year. And it never actually works out that way. There's always so much parity in this league, which is why you have to actually play the games. Nobody wins by, having a roster on paper. And then I'm going to start by getting into some Cavs talk as well. So some different topics for the day, but it'll be good. Okay, so starting with some Cavs talk here. I feel like it sucks that I always feel like I'm doing this where I'm like telling fans in Cleveland how to feel, but I've just sensed, not even just with the Browns, but also with the Cavs now, this just overall negativity that is persistent in the fan base. And I really don't think it's always been like that. Like, of course, the fans have always rode the lows and felt those with the team, and you feel the highs too, but I just felt like there used to be a lot more joy in watching games, and now it's just all about the expectations, sometimes unrealistic expectations that people have set for these teams. And if they're not, winning every single game and perfectly hitting every single one of those expectations, the season is a complete disappointment to a lot of people. And I just think that is a horrible way to watch sports. Like, if you are only watching to be, the best team in the league making it to the Super Bowl every year, you're going to hate watching sports. Like, it's going to be an awful time for you. You should be able to enjoy, the good moments, even if it's not exactly what you had predicted. Like, I felt this during the Brown season. Even when we would win, it felt like it wasn't even good enough for some people. And I was like happy to have those moments and still celebrate with my friends and talk about the win and what went well, even if it was, not the season that everyone wanted. And I'm feeling that way with the Cavs now too, where like there's so many fun things to watch with this team on any given night, even on the bad nights where the game doesn't go our way. It's still a really fun, young, exciting team that I am grateful we have in Cleveland right now, and I'm really enjoying watching. And I don't think other people are having that experience because they've set these unrealistic expectations. And so I just kind of wanted to get into some of the things people are talking about and how we can kind of counteract some of those, fight back against them. So a lot of people have been saying that Darius Garland has regressed this season, which I think is a bit of a silly statement to make, just considering everything that has happened so far. Obviously, he's had a couple different health issues, which is one thing. But in general, if you're just talking about on paper, Darius Garland has not regressed this season. Statistically, he is doing exactly what he did last season, which is wildly impressive considering you added Donovan Mitchell to the roster this year, who was going to take away, shooting opportunities from Darius and just in general opportunities for Darius to have the ball in his hand. And that's what you want. That is what you wanted. We didn't want Darius Garland to have to do what he did last year, which was basically facilitate the entire offense at all times, and everything was riding on him. That's why you go and get a Donovan Mitchell, so you have another star who can take on a lot of that burden. So it's actually impressive that Darius is playing at the level that he's still playing at, with Donovan Mitchell out there as well. So I don't know where this idea has come from that he's taken some massive step back. I think sometimes people have revisionist history with last season because we were, exceeding expectations last season. I think people think everything was roses and rainbows in every single game. And last season had streaks where we were really bad and streaks where we were doing well, and Darius would have good games and bad games. Like, I think people forget that that still happened. Like, it wasn't perfect just because we did better than anticipated going into the season, which of course is awesome. It doesn't mean that everything was perfect and there weren't still bad moments. So I think that's something to remember, and it's not necessarily a bad thing if you're not seeing Darius Garland do exactly what he was doing last season. I think it would be concerning if he was, because that would mean Donovan Mitchell wasn't living up to the expectations that we had for him coming into Cleveland and what his job was going to need to be. So definitely want to keep that in mind. Same thing with Mobley. Like, I feel like there's been so many conversations about him, and look, he is a year and a half into his NBA career, and people have put him on this pedestal, which I think is great, because I of course see the upside of what Evan Mobley can be in this league and what his trajectory could really be. But I do think it's silly when people are so upset that, you know, one part of his game maybe hasn't come together, specifically 3-point shooting. Like, everyone wanted him to be able to take maybe a step in that category this year, and we haven't really seen that come to fruition yet. But what we have seen is improvements in other areas. He has continued to improve on the defensive side of the ball, which is crazy because he was already playing at such a high level last year in that aspect, and has improved that even more so this year. And just in general, when you watch Evan Mobley now compared to last season, and even compared to early on in this season, he looks so much stronger than I remember. Like, even when he just goes up to the basket with the ball, he is going up with a confidence and a power that he did not have before. So I think you can still be happy that Evan Mobley is improving in other areas, even if he hasn't improved his 3-point shooting yet. That could come down the line. Like, I've talked about this a number of times, but LeBron, I'm not comparing Evan Mobley to LeBron, but LeBron in his career added pieces to his game like 10 years into his career. Like, when he left Cleveland and went to Miami, he was adding new aspects to his game every single year, improving on things that people said, oh, well, LeBron can't do that, LeBron's not good at that, and he'd work on that thing that offseason and add it into his game. So it's okay that 1.5 years into Evan Mobley's career that he hasn't added every single thing into his game that you would like to see from him. I'm sure this offseason, you know, if the 3-point shooting still doesn't continue to come together, that's going to continue to be a big piece for him that he wants to work on. And that's okay. We can still enjoy Evan Mobley and what he is doing as a young kid on this team without having to be upset because he's not reaching all of those goals. It's interesting too, I think, going into the season, a lot of people set the Cavs pretty high in terms of what their record should be, because, you know, they won 40 some games last season. A lot of people said they should win over 50 games this season because you added Donovan Mitchell, which of course in theory that makes sense. But I, on this podcast, specifically remember talking about how I don't think that is a given, because the East is so competitive and a lot of other teams got better and have done things to build their roster, or just even the players that they already have continuing to improve as well as a team. And so I didn't think 50 games was some kind of given that was just going to happen. It was going to be hard and it was going to be tough to win on any given night. And just because you on paper, again, improve, there's so many other factors that exist in the league that was going to make it a competitive conference. And we're seeing that. The top of the East for the entirety of this season has been within like 2 or 3 games of each other for those first 6 seeds. Like, it's a tight group. The Cavs right now would probably be like I think they would be the 3rd seed in the West right now, with the record that they have in the East. So we knew it was going to be competitive. And of course, I, more than anything, do not want to be in a play-in game. I would like to just be a playoff team, have a seed going into it, not have to deal with that. That is definitely the goal. And of course, it sucks to see them slowly start to trickle down on the list. They're at 5 right now. Miami is getting a little bit close to them, but still have a lot of basketball left. So I'm not going to say that this is, that they're going to fall into the play-in for sure. They obviously can continue to improve. But we just always knew the East was going to be this competitive. So I want people to be able to enjoy watching sports and have a good time doing it. So I just think sometimes it's best to like really think about what the expectations you're setting, and on any given night, like try to just enjoy watching the team. Like we have Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Jared Allen, and Evan Mobley on our basketball team. Have some fun watching it. That's such a cool thing to have. Cavs games, watching them in Cleveland are the absolute best when you go to Rocket Mortgage. Such a fun environment. Like this can still be fun. It doesn't have to be the end of the world all the time. Obviously, the other conversation that everyone has been having is about JB. And I feel like I'm having deja vu with the conversations I've had on here about the Browns. It's pretty weird, actually, the way it all has come back around, because I will defend JB in some way on Twitter or whatever, and the responses I get are literally copy-paste of what people say about Kevin Stefanski. Like, it's the same rhetoric, and I feel like I'm just living in some weird universe. It's pretty wild. And look, like, whenever I defend coaches, like, I feel like people think I'm saying they're perfect, and I don't think JB's perfect. There's been a couple end game decisions that maybe should have gone differently in terms of timeout usage. We never know with an actual like play call at the end of the game what was supposed to happen, because sometimes, I don't know, someone has a certain job that maybe they don't do correctly. So I have a hard time always pinpointing that. And a lot of times we hear after the game when they're talking in their press conference that something was supposed to happen differently in terms of what JB called. So I just think I'm not going to like ride on him for that stuff as much as other people. And look, when it comes to rotations, I think there's been some issues recently, but JB has explained that well in saying that, I mean, last night against the Knicks was the first time we had our entire rotation healthy this season, because obviously Ricky was out for the vast majority of the season. We've had Donovan hurt, we've had Darius hurt, we've had Jared hurt, we've had everyone's been hurt at some point. So that was the first time we were able to get all the guys together. And so JB's going to try out some different rotations. And he said that himself, like in the first half for, the games coming up here, he's going to be trying out some different things. So look, I think Kevin Love needs less minutes too, but JB is working through some stuff to see what's going to work right now. And it might not always be pretty. And what he said was that he's going to try out those things in the first half, and then in the second half, you go out there and try to win it. And I think we saw that in the Knicks game. There was a rotation out there that didn't have Darius or Donovan and had a couple other guys. Wasn't going so well. And that happened in the first half. We didn't really see that issue happening in the second half. Obviously, we weren't able to pull the game out, but those things are going to happen when you're working through those kinks that most teams are working through in October, but we're working through in January because of the state of the roster and the health of the roster. And just a side note, very unfortunate that Donovan got hurt in the legitimate last second of the game. That one pretty much killed me. It seems like he's going to be out for a little bit now, and that was tough. And the 2-minute report, of course, was just released that he got fouled twice at the end of that game, and it wasn't called. So another one that just goes to the refs. Very unfortunate. But sorry for the tangent there. Just wanted to, give my thoughts on not condemning JB in the way people are. Like, I feel like people just want to jump to coaching right away as the first thing that's going to change everything. I think JB has done a great job with this team, getting these young players to improve so quickly the way that they have, the way they all play together for each other. And look, they're still young, so you are going to have bad nights and bad mistakes, and those things are going to happen. And I don't think that means you just fire JB because of that. I think he's a huge part of the reason that we're here in the first place. And I don't think jumping ship like that is going to do what people think it's going to do. And I always pose the question, like, what is your better option that you want right now? Like, people are like, fire him, but who do you want that you think is going to magically improve these issues? These issues get improved by playing more basketball and working through things. It's an 82-game season, and that's just kind of how it goes. On a more positive note for the Cavs, though, Evan Mobley put up 38 points against the Bucks. This is the vision of Evan Mobley that we all have to be this ideal version. As I mentioned, he's just looking stronger and better in every way when he's going up with the basketball and just defensively continuing to improve. But it was fun to watch that, especially towards the end of the game. I know Giannis was out, but like it was super important to get that game going and get that win. So it was a really big night for Evan, and I was very, very happy for him, and hopefully that's something good he can build on and gain some confidence from. So that's all I have to say about the Cavs. Okay, so just some quick thoughts on the divisional round, playoffs, everything. I thought the divisional round was kind of boring, to be honest. Like, the wild card weekend gave us some really exciting games, and I felt like the divisional round it wasn't serving that to us. The Bengals beat the Bills. It wasn't really an exciting competitive game. The Bills looked pretty dead. Eagles beat the Giants. Again, Giants did not put up a fight at all. Honestly, one of the better ones was Kansas City Jags, which I don't know if everyone would have expected, but I think it became competitive because obviously Patrick Mahomes got hurt. He was seen today practicing, seems to be moving pretty well. So I think he is going to be okay, which is just better for the sport. Like, I don't want anyone to get injured in the playoffs because that immediately just ruins the quality of football that we're watching. And you just don't want to see that for any guy in general. So I think the Kansas City Bengals matchup will be better for it if he is healthy. And then the 49ers beat the Cowboys, and the Cowboys didn't really have a good game either. So it wasn't as exciting because I enjoy these games more when it feels like both teams are playing their best football. And I think we saw on all of the winning teams, they were, for the most part, were playing their absolute best football. And the losing teams just were flat. They came out flat. Like, I wanted a Chiefs-Bills from last year where it was like just a fight back and forth. That's what you want. And so it was kind of a bummer to not get that. But maybe we'll get it this weekend where we have Bengals, Kansas City, and we have Eagles and 49ers. I would like the Chiefs to beat the Bengals. I have said this on here. I am over the Bengals. I always like Joe Burrow, and he's always going to be like my guy. I enjoy watching him. I think he's a great guy. He's a Buckeye forever, no matter what. I want the Bengals to lose. I'm so over their fans and the way that they have been operating in the last couple of weeks. It's just like a constant like victim mentality that's been very strange to watch. Like, they'll make up like fake storylines to feel like they have some motivation in a very strange way. Like, they were mad that the Bills were selling tickets for the neutral site if they were to win in this past round and make it to the conference championship. As if every single team doesn't do that all of the time. Like, how many times have you gotten an email from a team like selling tickets to a game that you haven't actually qualified for yet? That's just how it goes. Like, the venues start doing that, the teams start doing that. I remember all the time in college, I would always get emails to buy tickets for the Big Ten championship, and if Ohio State wasn't even in it yet, and then they would refund you if it actually didn't come to fruition. That is literally how the system works. So they made up this fake motivation to get really angry about it and kept like yelling things about it. And I was like, this is so weird. Why are we making up things? It was kind of like the Georgia player after the national championship that said, like, everyone doubted us. People thought we were going 7-4. No one thought you were going 7-4. Who did you find, like a random podcaster somewhere that said you're going 7-4? Because everyone knew Georgia was a dynasty. Like, I get having to create things to motivate yourself, but the Bengals have been doing it constantly and feeling like everyone's against them and everyone's doubting them, and it's getting annoying at this point. And beyond that, I won't cheer for other teams in our division to win. I've said this, a lot of people disagree. I want the Bengals, the Ravens, and the Steelers to never win a football game, ever. I don't want any of them to win a single football game. That's how I operate. Like, I want the Browns to win every game, and I want our division opponents to lose every game. Like, I don't know how else to put it. And a lot of people are like, no, it's another team in Ohio. You can cheer for them. It's not how it works. They wouldn't cheer for us. They wouldn't cheer for us. I am not cheering for them. I don't blame other people if they want to root on the Bengals or whatever, do whatever you want. I have never operated like that. I don't really understand it, and it's just not going to happen for me. So I'm pulling for Kansas City, and I'd like to see the Eagles make it. I think the Eagles have had a really fun season, and I just think that matchup in the Super Bowl would be pretty exciting. So I don't care as much about the NFC, to be honest. Like, I don't have a rooting interest in it in the same way I do in the AFC. So neither team making it will bother me either way. But I just think that would be a fun game to watch. So we'll see what happens. Okay, so NFL awards, they announced the finalists for all of the awards, so we obviously won't know who wins until Super Bowl weekend, but kind of wanted to go through who I think from the finalists is going to win as compared to what I picked, which some of them I was so off on. I couldn't have been further off. It actually made me laugh when I looked it up. I'm like, that's what I said going into the season. It was quite mind-blowing, actually. So we'll start with MVP. I think of all of the finalists, I think Patrick Mahomes is going to win. I think he has been the best quarterback this season, most consistent, deserves to win it. Preseason, my prediction was Josh Allen, which he is a finalist for it. There are 5 quarterbacks. So I think he could win it, but I think it's going to be Patrick Mahomes. So that pick wasn't super far off. I think it was still a fair pick. Offensive player of the year, I think it's going to be Justin Jefferson. I think in terms of offensive weapons, he is the best of the best in this league. Repeatedly has just incredible how did he do that plays. So I think he very much deserves to win that. This one is a funny prediction I had preseason. I thought Jonathan Taylor was going to win Offensive Player of the Year. Could not be further from how his season went. I mean, he had such a great year last season that I thought he was going to build on it, but that goes to show you, unless your name's like Nick Chubb or Derrick Henry, never trust a running back. Like, putting back-to-back good years for running backs doesn't happen as much as people like to think it does. That's why Nick Chubb is like an alien for the consistency he's had in his career. Most running backs aren't able to do that. So lesson learned, probably pick a wide receiver next time. Defensive player of the year, I think it's going to be Micah Parsons. Maybe Nick Bosa, but I don't know. I'm just going with Micah Parsons based on my gut feeling. I said for the millionth time, because I pick him every year, I said it was going to be Myles Garrett. Every year, I just feel like he's close, and he just, at some point, is going to need to win it because he's been one of the best defensive players in the league for many, many years now, and I just feel like I'm going to keep picking him until he wins it. But he wasn't even a finalist, unfortunately. I feel like he might have deserved it. Had to be close, at least, to being one of the finalists. Offensive Rookie of the Year, I think, is going to be Garrett Wilson. What he was able to do with the Jets, especially with the level of quarterback play they had there and the constant revolving door of quarterbacks, pretty impressive what he was able to do. I preseason said it was going to be George Pickens, which isn't an awful pick. Like, he obviously didn't have the production that would live up to being able to get that award, but I think he is still a really good receiver and had some good moments in Pittsburgh. So I'm not like super mad about that pick. Defensive Rookie of the Year, I feel like this is pretty universal. I think it's going to be Sauce Gardner. Just like, honestly, he could be a Defensive Player of the Year candidate because he's just had that good of a season and is probably only going to get better. I said it was going to be Aiden Hutchinson, which he is one of the finalists for it, so that's not super crazy. Decent pick there. Comeback, I think it's going to be Geno. I didn't actually pick one of these when I was going through the preseason ones. I must have just skipped over it, but I think Geno's going to end up winning it. What he has done in Seattle with a team that had such low expectations after getting rid of Russell Wilson, and honestly, just the contrast to what ended up happening with Russell Wilson this season was pretty remarkable. I just think Geno deserves that award. And Coach of the Year, I think it is going to be Brian Daboll for what he's done with that Giants team. My preseason pick, pretty bad. Coach of the Year, I said Matt LaFleur. Obviously, the Packers didn't even make the playoffs. My reasoning for that at the time was I felt like Davante Adams was gone, and if the the Packers were able to like reload and continue playing at the level they were, that Matt LaFleur would deserve it because he was able to do that without the star receiver. But it didn't end up happening. The Packers they got better at the end and were close, but it didn't end up happening. So yeah, I think it's going to be Brian Daboll for what he has done with that Giants team. It was fun to watch them. Obviously they kind of fell apart at the end there against the Eagles, but overall they were a fun team to watch that seemed like they played really hard for each other and played really hard for their coach. And he's done a lot everywhere he's been, like everything he did with Josh Allen, like he's done great things in his career, and I think has done an admirable job in New York. Okay, now to my preseason division predictions. I picked the winner of each division going into the preseason, and then what actually ended up happening. Some of these are pretty funny, and again, just tells you this is why we play the games. AFC North, I said Ravens. It ended up being the Bengals, which this one wasn't that bad because it really came down to the wire and everything was fluky with, you know, the Bills-Bengals game being missed. Obviously, Bengals ended up finishing out, so it was close down to the end, though, so I don't feel so bad about that pick. The next pick I feel pretty bad about, though. AFC South, I said the Colts were going to win the division. They were god-awful this season. Ended up being the Jags, which I did not think was going to happen, that they were going to be able to make the jump in such an extreme way that they have made, and, you know, had one of the best games in the divisional round against the Chiefs. AFC East, I said Bills, which ended up being correct. AFC West, I said Chargers, and it ended up being the Chiefs, which is just my note to stop doubting Patrick Mahomes and pretending like anything else is going to happen ever. Like, of course it was going to be the Chiefs. I got all cute and said it was going to be the Chargers. Didn't happen. Don't doubt Patrick Mahomes ever again. NFC North, I said Packers, and it was the Vikings. Obviously, like I said, with the Matt LaFleur stuff, I thought the Packers were going to be a bit better this year, but the Vikings ended up being, you know, a great regular season team, which meant nothing for them losing in the wild card round. NFC South, I said Buccaneers, which was right, but like I don't even want to count this one because that division doesn't even deserve a winner in general for the level of play that we had to watch from all of those teams. Just not deserving of a title in general. NFC East, I said Eagles, and that was right. And then the NFC West, I said 49ers, and that was right. So did better on the NFC actually than the AFC, which is funny. My Super Bowl pick was Bills versus 49ers, which is not that bad of a pick, I'll say. Like, obviously, expectations were high for the Bills, and they unfortunately did not live up to them. 49ers, I'm like pretty proud of that one. A lot of people I feel like were picking the Eagles preseason, which is still a great pick, obviously, but the fact that Kyle Shanahan can just have anyone at quarterback in that offense and still have it be able to run perfectly is so impressive. And I think going into the season, I just felt like they had so many weapons on not just the offensive side of the ball, but also the defensive side, that they were going to stand the test of time no matter what was thrown their way. And they had a lot thrown their way, a lot of different quarterback situations. And now you got Brock Purdy in the conference championship. So will be interesting to see how that goes and what happens. God, it would be so funny if Brock Purdy won a Super Bowl this year. Like, after all of the quarterback debates that everyone has about needing an elite quarterback, if they just go out and win with Brock Purdy, it would just be hilarious for the NFL discourse. I would thoroughly enjoy that. So it's possible, man. We'll see what happens. That's the thing with like NFL playoffs that's different than other sports, where you have a series to really, I don't know, see who the better team is. Like, I think typically in a series in the NBA or the MLB, the better team prevails just with the amount of time you have to play. Sometimes that doesn't happen in an underdog, or, you know, something fluky happens. But in general, I feel like in those situations, the better team comes out. Anything can happen in one game in the NFL playoffs. Like, of course, a lot of times, like I think this past weekend, I think the better team in each game won. And I think that was for sure the case. But things get weird sometimes. One turnover doesn't go your way, a ball bounces wrong. You just never know what happens. So that's what makes it so exciting, and just living and dying with each moment in it. So God, I hope the Browns are in the playoffs next year so that we can enjoy all of these moments as a fan base. I want that for us and everyone so we can all be happy together again, because I don't like when things are disappointing and aren't going our way. All right, well, that is all I have for you guys today. Not much Browns to get into, to be honest. It's pretty quiet right now as they're building up the defensive staff around Jim Schwartz. I'm sure more of those conversations will come out in the coming weeks about how that's going to actually end up looking. But Jim Schwartz was, of course, the big piece of the equation that you needed. We start getting into free agency then, post Super Bowl, and then we get into the draft and things are moving. And then we have a sad summer where we don't know what to do because we have nothing to talk about, but we'll find something to do. We'll power through. But like I said, that's all I have. Thank you guys for listening. Please leave a review, rating, share with a friend, all of that good stuff. I appreciate you. Go Cavs, go Browns. Enjoy the NFL playoffs.